The morning air in Atlanta carried the familiar scent of exhaust and coffee as Sarah Collins pulled her patrol SUV into the precinct parking lot. Max sat alert in the back compartment, his dark eyes tracking every movement outside the vehicle. 6 years of partnership had made them inseparable, two halves of a perfectly synchronized machine. Sarah killed the engine and glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, evidence of another restless night spent reviewing case files. The drug bust last week had gone smoothly, too smoothly perhaps. Something about Marcus Webb's behavior during the operation had nagged at her intuition, but she had pushed the feeling aside. Marcus was her partner, her friend. They had worked together for 3 years. She opened the back door, and Max leaped out gracefully, his tactical harness gleaming in the morning sun. His tail wagged once, twice, then stilled as his training kicked in. Work mode. Sarah attached his lead, and together they walked toward the precinct entrance. The building was unusually quiet for a Thursday morning. Sarah felt it immediately, that subtle shift in atmosphere that every cop learned to recognize. Eyes turned away as she passed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Officer Jenkins, who always had a joke ready, suddenly became very interested in his paperwork. Max's ears flattened slightly. He sensed it too. Captain Morrison stood at the end of the hallway, his face carved from stone. Beside him were 2 men in dark suits that screamed, "Internal Affairs." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Officer Collins." Morrison's voice was flat, professional, completely devoid of the warmth he usually showed his officers. "Conference room, now." Sarah's hand tightened on Max's lead. "What's this about, Captain?" "Conference room," he repeated, then turned and walked away. The suits followed Morrison, their shoes clicking against the linoleum with mechanical precision. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing through possibilities. A complaint from a suspect, a procedural violation, but that would not explain the presence of internal affairs. Max pressed against her leg, a gentle reminder that she was not alone. They walked to the conference room in silence. Every step felt heavier than the last. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see more people waiting inside. Lieutenant Hayes from IA, a woman with a briefcase she did not recognize, and Marcus Webb, sitting with his arms crossed, refusing to meet her eyes. Her blood turned to ice. Morrison held the door open. "Max stays outside." "No!" Sarah's voice was firm. "He goes where I go." "This is not negotiable, Collins." Max looked up at her, those intelligent brown eyes full of questions she could not answer. Sarah knelt down and stroked his head, her fingers trembling slightly. "Stay, boy. Good boy. Stay." She secured his lead to a bench outside the conference room where he could see her through the glass. Max sat perfectly still, but his gaze never left her face. Even through the wall, she could feel his concern radiating toward her like a physical force. Inside, the air was suffocating. Morrison gestured to a chair. Sarah remained standing. Lieutenant Hayes opened a folder and spread photographs across the table. Crime scene photos, evidence bags, surveillance images. Sarah leaned forward, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then she recognized herself in one of the photos. "What is this?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Officer Collins, I'm Lieutenant Hayes, Internal Affairs. We've been conducting an investigation into evidence tampering and corruption within the Narcotics Division." He tapped one of the photos. "This is you, 3 months ago, at the evidence lockup, alone. After hours, I was logging evidence from the Henderson bust. It's all documented. Documented, yes, but the evidence logged does not match what was actually seized." Hayes pulled out another document. "According to our forensic accountants, approximately $200,000 in seized narcotics and cash has disappeared from the evidence room over the past 18 months. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "That's impossible. Every piece of evidence I've ever handled has been properly logged, witnessed, and sealed. Except when you weren't witnessed," Hayes continued, his tone never changing. "Except when you had access alone. Except when your partner was conveniently occupied elsewhere. Her eyes snapped to Marcus. He still would not look at her. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice cracking slightly. Tell them. You know I would never. I know what the evidence shows, Marcus interrupted, finally meeting her gaze. His eyes were cold, empty. I know you had access. I know you had opportunity. And I know we're partners, but I can't protect you from this. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Sarah gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. The woman with the briefcase spoke for the first time. Miss Collins, I'm Attorney Davidson from the District Attorney's Office. Based on the evidence compiled by Internal Affairs, we are prepared to bring formal charges of theft, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to distribute narcotics. This is insane, Sarah's voice rose. I've given 6 years to this department. I've risked my life. Your service record is not in question, Morrison cut her off. His face was grey, older somehow. Your recent actions are, Officer Collins, I'm placing you on immediate administrative leave pending the outcome of the Internal Affairs investigation. Captain, you know me. You know I would never. What I know is that evidence has gone missing on your watch. Morrison's voice cracked slightly, betraying the first hint of emotion. What I know is that your name is all over the access logs. What I know is that I have no choice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside was her badge. Sarah Collins, you are suspended from active duty effective immediately. You will surrender your badge, your service weapon, and all department credentials. The room spun. This could not be happening. 6 years of perfect service, 6 years of partnership with Max. 6 years of putting criminals behind bars, and now they were treating her like one of them. Sarah unclipped her badge from her belt. The silver metal felt impossibly heavy in her hand. She had earned this badge. She had bled for it, and now they were taking it away based on lies. She placed it on the table with a sharp click that seemed to echo in the silent room. My weapon is in my locker. You can collect it there. We'll also need your access cards and department vehicle keys, Hayes added. Sarah dug into her pockets, pulling out everything they demanded. Each item felt like another piece of her identity being stripped away. When her pockets were empty, she looked directly at Marcus. I trusted you, she said quietly. I had your back in every situation. I would have taken a bullet for you. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. How long? Sarah demanded. How long have you been setting me up? That's enough, Collins, Morrison warned. No, it's not enough. Sarah's control finally cracked. I want to know how long my partner has been framing me for his crimes. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Sarah took a step toward him. You made sure I was alone in the evidence room. You volunteered to take the Henderson bust paperwork so I'd have to go back after hours. You've been covering your tracks by putting them all over mine. These are serious allegations, Officer Collins, Attorney Davidson interjected. If you have evidence to support these claims, she doesn't, Marcus said firmly. She's desperate and trying to deflect blame. Outside the glass wall, Max had risen to his feet. His body was tense, ears forward, reading the escalating situation with perfect clarity. A low growl rumbled in his chest, audible even through the wall. Control your dog, Collins, Hayes ordered. Sarah turned to see Max pressed against the glass, his eyes locked on Marcus. In 6 years, she had never seen Max react to another officer with anything but friendly acceptance. But now, watching Marcus with his partner under attack, Max's instincts were crystal clear. He knew. Somehow, he knew. Max, easy boy, Sarah called out. Max's growl stopped, but his vigilant stance did not change. Morrison sighed heavily. Collins, go home. Don't leave the city. Don't contact any witnesses or officers involved in your cases. Don't interfere with this investigation in any way. Do you understand? I understand that I'm being railroaded, Sarah said bitterly. You're being investigated, Morrison corrected. There's a difference. If you're innocent, the investigation will prove it. And if the investigation is rigged, Sarah looked at each person in the room. If the real criminal is sitting right here, destroying evidence against himself, while you all focus on me. Enough, Morrison's voice was final. You're dismissed. Go home. Sarah walked to the door, her legs feeling like lead. She opened it, and Max was immediately at her side, pressing against her leg with solid, reassuring warmth. His eyes scanned the room one more time, memorizing faces, categorizing threats. Together, they walked down the hallway. The same officers who had avoided her eyes before now watched openly, whispering to each other. Sarah kept her head high, refusing to show weakness. But inside, she was breaking. In the locker room, she changed out of her uniform for what might be the last time. The blue fabric had been like a second skin for 6 years. Now it felt foreign, contaminated by accusation and betrayal. She folded it carefully and placed it in her locker, along with her duty belt and equipment. Max sat beside the bench, his gaze never wavering from her face. When she was dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt, she knelt down and wrapped her arms around his neck. "It's just you and me now, buddy," she whispered into his fur. "Everyone else turned their backs, but not you. Never you." Max licked her cheek once, gently, his version of a promise. They left through the back exit to avoid more stairs. Sarah's personal truck was parked in the far corner of the lot. As she opened the passenger door for Max, she caught movement from the corner of her eye. Marcus stood at the second-floor window, watching them leave. Their eyes met across the distance. For just a moment, Sarah thought she saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, regret, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold indifference. Sarah climbed into her truck and slammed the door harder than necessary. Max settled in the passenger seat, his head resting on her shoulder as she gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. "He did this," she said aloud. "I don't know how yet, but Marcus did this, and I'm going to prove it." Max whined softly in agreement. Sarah started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving behind the only career she had ever wanted. But she was not defeated. Not yet. Because she knew the truth, and the truth had a way of surfacing no matter how deep someone tried to bury it. As they drove through Atlanta's streets, Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Officer Collins?" The voice was female, young, frightened. "Who is this?" "My name is Amy Chen. I'm a waitress at Joe's Diner on Piedmont. I think I can help you. I saw something. I heard something. About your partner." Sarah pulled over so fast that Max braced himself against the dashboard. "What did you see?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me?" "Tonight after my shift, 10 o'clock. But come alone. If they know I'm talking to you, they'll kill me." "Who will kill you?" "The same people who are trying to destroy you," Amy whispered. "Your partner isn't working alone, Officer Collins, and you're in much more danger than you realize." The line went dead. Sarah sat in her truck, staring at the phone, her mind racing. A witness, someone who could corroborate what she already knew in her gut. But why would a waitress have information about police corruption? And how did she get Sarah's number? Max nudged her hand with his nose, bringing her back to the present moment. "Looks like we have a meeting tonight, buddy," Sarah said, scratching behind his ears. "And maybe, just maybe, we're about to get our lives back." But as she pulled back into traffic, Sarah could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The badge on Morrison's table had been just the first piece to fall. How many more would follow before the truth finally emerged? Sarah sat in her truck outside Joe's Diner at 9:45, 15 minutes early. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting red and blue shadows across the wet pavement. A light rain had started an hour ago, turning the Atlanta streets into mirrors that reflected the city's restless energy. Max was alert in the passenger seat, his eyes tracking every person who entered or exited the diner. Sarah had considered leaving him at home, but the thought lasted only seconds. Max was not just her partner, he was her edge, her early warning system, and right now, the only living being she trusted completely. "We don't know what we're walking into, boy," she murmured, running her fingers through his dense fur. This could be a setup. Amy Chen could be working with Marcus. This whole thing could be designed to finish what they started. Max turned his head and looked directly at her, his brown eyes steady and calm. Sarah had seen that look 1,000 times before. It meant, "I've got your back, always." She checked her watch. 9:52. Through the diner's large windows, she could see the dinner crowd thinning out. A tired-looking waitress moved between tables, refilling coffee and clearing plates. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the standard diner uniform. White shirt, black pants, apron tied at the waist. Amy Chen. It had to be. Sarah had spent the afternoon researching the woman who had called her. Amy was 26 years old, had worked at Joe's for 3 years, and had no criminal record, no connection to law enforcement, no obvious ties to Marcus or any known criminals. On paper, she was exactly what she appeared to be, a waitress trying to make ends meet in a city that did not make life easy for anyone. But Sarah had learned the hard way that appearances meant nothing. At exactly 10 o'clock, Sarah opened her door. "Stay close, Max. If anything feels wrong, you let me know." Max jumped down gracefully, his paws barely making a sound on the wet asphalt. Sarah did not attach his lead. If this went bad, she needed Max to have full mobility. He understood immediately, falling into position at her left side, slightly behind her, his body coiled with controlled energy. The bell above the diner door chimed as they entered. The few remaining customers looked up briefly, then returned to their meals. A cook was visible through the service window, scraping down the grill. The smell of coffee and fried food hung heavy in the air. Amy was wiping down the counter. When she saw Sarah, her hand froze mid-motion. Her face went pale, and her eyes darted to the door, to the windows, to the kitchen, mapping every exit with the instinct of someone who had been running from something for a long time. Sarah approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Max stayed at her side, his presence commanding but not aggressive. "Amy Chen." Sarah kept her voice low. The waitress nodded, her grip tightening on the dish rag she was holding. "You brought a dog. He's my partner, the only one I can trust right now." Amy looked down at Max, who sat perfectly still, his intelligent eyes studying her. After a moment, something in her posture relaxed slightly. "I like dogs. Dogs don't lie." "Neither do I," Sarah said firmly. "You said you had information about Marcus Webb. I need to know what you saw." Amy glanced at the cook, who was now focused on his phone, then at the last remaining customers in a booth at the far end of the diner. "Not here. My shift ends in 10 minutes. There's a storage room in back. Wait for me there." She pointed to a door marked "Employees Only" and quickly moved away to clear the last table. Sarah watched her work, noting the practiced efficiency, the way she avoided eye contact with everyone, the subtle tremor in her hands that she could not quite hide. This woman was terrified. Sarah moved to the employee door and pushed it open. A short hallway led past a small office and a restroom before ending at the storage room. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with industrial-sized cans of vegetables, bags of flour, boxes of napkins and straws. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. Max entered first, his nose working, cataloguing scents. He made a complete circuit of the room before sitting near the door, positioned where he could watch both Sarah and anyone who entered. Sarah leaned against a shelf and waited. Her mind kept replaying the confrontation in the conference room, Marcus's cold eyes, Morrison's disappointment, the badge on the table. 6 years of her life, reduced to evidence in a corruption case. But if Amy Chen really did have information, if there was proof that Marcus had framed her, then maybe Sarah could start clawing her way back. The door opened, and Amy slipped inside, locking it behind her. She had removed her apron and looked even younger without it. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was breathing too fast. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked. "No." Amy's voice was barely above a whisper. "I haven't been all right since I realized what I'd seen. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have pretended I didn't hear anything. But then I saw you on the news today, and I knew I couldn't let them destroy you for something you didn't do." I was on the news. Amy pulled out her phone and showed Sarah the screen. There she was, a photo from her personnel file with the headline, "Atlanta K-9 officer suspended amid corruption probe." Sarah's jaw clenched. They had leaked it to the press already. This was not just about destroying her career. They wanted to destroy her reputation too. "What did you see, Amy?" "Start from the beginning." Amy wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of the storage room. "Joe's Diner is a cop hangout, has been for years. We get officers from 3 different precincts. After a while you start to recognize faces, know who drinks their coffee black, who always orders the meatloaf. And you recognize Marcus. He started coming in about a year ago, always late at night after his shift. At first it was normal. He'd sit at the counter, eat dinner, tip well. But then he started meeting people, men I'd never seen before, men who looked—" Amy struggled for the word. "Dangerous," Sarah supplied. "Yes, dangerous. They'd sit in the back booth, the one that's partially hidden from the front windows. I'd bring them coffee and they'd stop talking until I left. But one night, about 6 months ago, I was refilling the napkin dispensers near their booth and they didn't notice me, or they thought I couldn't hear them." Amy's hands were shaking now. Max stood and moved closer to her, not touching, just offering his solid presence. Amy looked down at him, and something in her face softened. "It's okay," Sarah encouraged. "Tell me what you heard." "Your partner was talking about evidence, about how easy it was to make things disappear from the property room, about how the system was full of holes if you knew where to look. And the other man, the one with the scar on his neck, he said something like, 'Just make sure the K-9 cop takes the fall. She's perfect. Clean record, no one will suspect her until it's too late.'" The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. 6 months ago. Marcus had been planning this for 6 months, carefully laying the groundwork, making sure every piece of evidence pointed to her. "Did Marcus use my name?" "Not then. But I looked up all the K-9 officers after that, and you were the only woman. You were his partner. It had to be you they were talking about." Sarah began pacing, her mind working furiously. "Did you recognize the man with the scar?" "No, but I've seen him twice since then, always meeting with your partner. And last week I saw him again with 2 other men. They were talking about a shipment, something big coming through the port. They mentioned a judge, someone who would make sure things went smoothly." "A judge?" Sarah stopped pacing. This was bigger than she had thought, much bigger. "I didn't get a name, but they seemed confident, like they owned the whole system." Amy's voice cracked. "I thought about going to the police, but who could I trust? What if I went to the wrong person? What if Marcus's friends are everywhere in the department?" "Why did you call me today?" Amy looked Sarah straight in the eyes. "Because I saw you on the news and I saw your face. You were angry, but you weren't guilty. I've been waitressing for years. I know how to read people. You didn't do what they're accusing you of, and if I stayed quiet, they'd destroy you and get away with it." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she had been carrying since this morning. Someone believed her. A stranger, someone with no reason to risk herself, believed in Sarah's innocence. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "You're taking a huge risk." "I know. That's why I need your help." Amy's voice rose slightly. "If they find out I talked to you, I'm dead. These men, they're not just corrupt cops. They're connected to serious criminals. The kind of people who make witnesses disappear." Max suddenly stood, his body going rigid. His ears swiveled toward the door, picking up something Sarah could not yet hear. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Someone's coming," Sarah whispered, instantly alert. Amy's face went white. "The cook already left. I locked the front door. No one should be here." Footsteps in the hallway, heavy and deliberate, not trying to be quiet. Sarah positioned herself between Amy and the door, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon that was no longer on her hip. She cursed silently. Without her badge, she had no authority, no backup, no firearm. All she had was Max. The door handle rattled, locked. Then came 3 sharp knocks. "Amy, you in there?" A man's voice, rough and impatient. Amy grabbed Sarah's arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "That's him," she mouthed silently. "The man with the scar." Sarah's heart hammered. She looked around the storage room for another exit. Nothing. They were trapped. "Amy, I know you're in there. Your car's still in the lot." The voice was closer now, right against the door. "Open up. We need to talk." Max's growl deepened, his lips curling back to reveal white teeth. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring. Sarah made a split-second decision. She grabbed Amy and pulled her behind a tall shelf unit, then positioned herself where she could see the door but had cover. Max stayed at her side, waiting for the command. The lock rattled again, more forcefully. Then came the sound of metal on metal. He was picking the lock. "When I say go, run for the back door," Sarah whispered to Amy. "Get to my truck. It's the blue Ford parked on the side street. Get in and lock the doors. What about you? Max and I will slow him down. But you need to move fast." The lock clicked. The door swung open. The man who entered was exactly as Amy had described. Mid-40s, muscular build, and a thick scar running from his jaw down his neck, disappearing under his collar. His eyes swept the room, predator-sharp, until they locked onto Sarah's position. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Well, Officer Collins, or should I say former Officer Collins, saw you on the news today. Tough break, losing your badge like that." "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, stepping out from behind the shelf. Better to face him head-on than let him think she was hiding. "Name's Crane. I work with your partner. Or I should say, I worked with your partner. Marcus did his job. You took the fall nice and clean. Should have just accepted it and moved on." "Moved on? You framed me for crimes I didn't commit." Crane shrugged. "Business is business. Someone had to take the blame. Marcus picked you. Nothing personal. Where's Amy?" Crane's eyes flicked to the shelf where Amy was hidden. "Right behind you, I'd guess. Smart girl, that one. Too smart for her own good. She should have kept pouring coffee and stayed out of things that don't concern her." Max took a step forward, putting himself between Crane and Sarah. His growl was a continuous rumble now, a warning that needed no translation. "Nice dog," Crane said conversationally. "A Belgian Malinois, right? Expensive training. Shame you won't have him much longer. Department's probably going to reassign him once they officially fire you." Sarah's voice was ice. "You need to leave. Now." "Can't do that. See, I came here for the waitress. She's seen too much, heard too much. Time to tie up loose ends." Crane reached behind his back and pulled out a handgun, holding it casually at his side. "You can walk away, Collins. This doesn't have to involve you. But the girl comes with me." "That's not happening." Crane's expression hardened. "You're not a cop anymore, Collins. You have no authority here, no gun, no backup, just a dog and a death wish." Sarah's voice was steady. "I don't need a badge to stop you." "Really?" Crane raised the gun, pointing it directly at Sarah's chest. "Last chance. Walk away or I put you down right here." Sarah looked at Max, their eyes meeting for just a second. 6 years of partnership distilled into a single moment of perfect understanding. "Max," Sarah said calmly. "Take him." Max exploded forward like a black and tan missile. Crane tried to track him with the gun, but Max was too fast, too well trained. He went low, hitting Crane's gun arm with 70 pounds of focused aggression. The weapon discharged, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly in the ceiling as Max's jaws clamped down on Crane's forearm. Crane screamed, trying to shake Max off, but the dog's bite was unbreakable. Sarah surged forward, driving her shoulder into Crane's midsection and slamming him back against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. "Amy, run!" Sarah shouted. Amy bolted from behind the shelf, sprinting for the back door. Sarah heard it crash open as Amy fled into the night. Crane threw a wild punch with his free hand, catching Sarah on the temple. Stars exploded across her vision, but she held on, grabbing for the fallen gun. Her fingers closed around cold metal just as Crane brought his knee up into her ribs. The air rushed out of her lungs, but Max never let go. He pulled and twisted, taking Crane off balance. The man crashed to the floor with Max on top of him. Sarah scrambled to her feet, gun in hand, aiming it at Crane's head. "Max, release!" Max let go immediately, backing up to Sarah's side, blood on his muzzle. Crane clutched his mangled arm, his face twisted in pain and rage. "You're done," Sarah said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "It's over." Crane laughed, a harsh sound that was more like choking. "Over? This is just starting, Collins. You have no idea how deep this goes. Marcus is small time. The people he works for, they own this city. Judges, captains, prosecutors. You think taking me down matters? There are 5 more just like me, and they're all looking for that waitress now." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You called them. Sent a text before I even walked in. They know she talked. They know she's running. And unless you can protect her 24/7, they will find her." Crane's eyes glittered with malice. "You're not a cop anymore, Collins. You can't protect anyone, not her, not yourself. You're just a woman with a dog and a stolen gun." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Amy must have called 911. "Guess we'll see about that," Sarah said. She grabbed Crane's good arm and zip-tied his wrists together using ties from a nearby box of supplies. "You're going to tell the police everything, every name, every crime, every dirty cop. Or what? You'll shoot me? You're not a killer, Collins. You're a good cop. Or you were." Crane spat blood. "I'm not telling you anything." The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights strobed through the window. Sarah leaned close to Crane, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're right about one thing. I'm not a killer. But Max, he's a trained attack dog who just watched you threaten his handler. If you don't cooperate, I might just forget to give him the command to stand down next time. Do you understand?" Max growled on cue, his eyes locked on Crane with predatory intensity. Crane's face went pale. The back door burst open and 4 uniformed officers flooded in, weapons drawn. "Hands up, drop the weapon." Sarah carefully placed the gun on the floor and raised her hands. Max sat instantly, trained not to move during police encounters. "I'm Officer Sarah Collins, badge number 4729. I'm currently suspended, but this man attacked me and a witness. There's evidence of police corruption involving Detective Marcus Webb. Amy Chen is a material witness and needs protection immediately." One of the officers recognized her. "Collins, what the hell are you doing here?" "Staying alive," Sarah said grimly, "and trying to catch the people who framed me." As they handcuffed Crane and read him his rights, Sarah looked out the back door into the rainy Atlanta night. Somewhere out there, Amy was running, terrified and alone. The people hunting her were organized, connected and ruthless. Sarah had lost her badge, her career, and nearly lost her life tonight. But she had gained something more valuable, proof that she was right. Marcus was guilty, Crane confirmed it, and there was a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of Atlanta law enforcement. Max pressed against her leg, his solid warmth a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. "We're going to find her, boy," Sarah whispered, "and we're going to keep her alive long enough to bring them all down." Max's tail wagged once. It was going to be enough. The abandoned warehouse on the industrial edge of Atlanta smelled of rust and forgotten machinery. Sarah had found it 2 hours after the confrontation at Joe's Diner, driving through back streets with Max alert in the passenger seat and Amy Chen huddled in the back, wrapped in Sarah's jacket and shaking uncontrollably. Now, at 3 in the morning, Sarah stood guard at the cracked window while Amy slept fitfully on a makeshift bed of old tarps and moving blankets. Max lay beside the young woman, his body positioned protectively between her and the door. Even in rest, his ears swiveled constantly, monitoring every sound from the street outside. Sarah's mind would not stop racing. The police had taken Crane into custody, but he had lawyered up immediately and refused to say another word. Without his testimony, all they had was an assault charge and illegal possession of a firearm. Nothing that connected him to Marcus. Nothing that proved the conspiracy Amy had described. And now Amy was a marked woman. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Captain Morrison. She let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it buzzed again. This time she answered. "Collins." Morrison's voice was sharp with exhaustion and barely controlled anger. "Where the hell are you?" "Somewhere safe." "Safe? You assaulted a man, stole his weapon, and fled the scene with a material witness. You're making this situation worse. That man came to kill Amy Chen. He admitted Marcus framed me. He's part of a larger conspiracy. Crane's attorney says you attacked his client unprovoked, says you're desperate and unstable. Every hour you stay out there with that witness, you're digging yourself deeper. Sarah's jaw tightened. Did you listen to what I just said? Crane confirmed Marcus set me up. Crane said nothing. He invoked his right to an attorney and has made no statement whatsoever. Morrison's voice softened slightly. Sarah, I want to believe you, but you need to come in. Bring the witness. Let us protect her. Let us investigate this properly. Investigate? Sarah laughed bitterly. Like you investigated me? Crane said they have judges, captains, prosecutors in their pocket. How do I know who to trust at the precinct? You trust me, Morrison said firmly. I did trust you. Yesterday morning I trusted you completely. Then you took my badge based on manufactured evidence. Silence on the line. When Morrison spoke again, his voice was heavy. What do you want me to say, Sarah? The evidence was compelling. I had no choice. You had every choice. You could have trusted 6 years of perfect service. You could have given me the benefit of the doubt, but you didn't. Bring Amy Chen in. Let her give an official statement. That's how we build a case. They'll kill her before she ever reaches a courtroom. You know that as well as I do. Then what's your plan? Hide her in a warehouse forever. You're not a cop anymore, Sarah. You can't protect her. Sarah looked at Max, who had raised his head and was watching her intently. I have Max. That's enough. It's not enough. Come in, please. Sarah ended the call and turned off her phone. Morrison meant well, but he was part of a system that had been compromised. Until Sarah knew exactly how deep the corruption ran, she could not risk bringing Amy anywhere near official channels. Max stood and padded over to her, pressing his nose into her hand. Sarah knelt down and wrapped her arms around his neck. Just us against the world, buddy. Think we can do this? Max licked her cheek once. His answer was always the same. Yes. Behind them, Amy stirred and sat up, her eyes wide and disoriented, until she remembered where she was. When she saw Sarah and Max, she relaxed slightly. What time is it? 3:15. How are you feeling? Terrified. Amy pulled the jacket tighter around herself. I keep seeing that man with the scar. Keep hearing him say my name. How did he find me so fast? Someone told him you were talking to me. Someone who's watching. Sarah moved away from the window and sat down across from Amy. We need to figure out who else is involved. You said you heard them mention a judge. Try to remember, was there anything else? A name, a detail, anything that might help identify who they're working with? Amy closed her eyes, thinking. The man with the scar, Crane, he mentioned something about a shipment, said it was coming through the port next week, said the judge would make sure customs looked the other way. Which port? Atlanta doesn't have a seaport. He said the port, that's all. But there was something else. Amy's eyes snapped open. One of the other men, he had an accent. Eastern European, maybe Russian. He kept talking about the arrangement and how much money they'd make. Millions. Russian connections, port shipments, corrupt judges. This was not just about Marcus stealing evidence anymore. This was organized crime on a scale that made Sarah's blood run cold. Did you ever see Marcus with this Russian man? Once. About a month ago. They were arguing about something. Marcus looked scared, like he was in over his head. The Russian man kept saying, "You do your job, we do ours, everyone gets paid." Sarah stood and paced the length of the warehouse. Max's eyes followed her movement, reading her agitation. Marcus got involved with people he couldn't control. He needed a scapegoat, someone clean he could frame, to take the heat off himself when things inevitably went wrong. He chose you because you'd never suspect your own partner, Amy said quietly. That's evil. That's desperation. Sarah stopped pacing. If Marcus is scared of these people, maybe we can use that. Maybe we can flip him, get him to testify against the others in exchange for protection. You think he'd turn on them? If he's scared enough, if he realizes they're going to eliminate him anyway, he might. Sarah pulled out a burner phone she had bought at a convenience store earlier. But first, I need to know who else is involved. I need someone I can trust in the department who can access internal files without raising flags. Who? Sarah thought for a moment, then dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. This better be important. "Detective Hayes, it's Sarah Collins." Silence, then, "Collins? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're in? Listen to me carefully. I know you're not involved in this. You transferred from homicide 6 months ago, which means you came in after Marcus's operation started. You're clean. How do you know that? Because if you were dirty, Crane would have mentioned your name. He was very proud of how many people they owned. He didn't mention you." Sarah took a breath. "I need help. Amy Chen is a witness who can expose the entire conspiracy, but she needs protection. Real protection, not the kind where she accidentally falls down a flight of stairs. You want me to go against my own department based on the word of a suspended officer and a waitress? I want you to look at the evidence objectively. Pull Marcus Webb's financials. Look at his access logs for the evidence room. Check his phone records. If I'm wrong, you'll find nothing. But if I'm right, you'll find a pattern that proves he's been stealing evidence and selling it." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "Even if what you're saying is true, going after a fellow detective without solid proof is career suicide. So, is letting corruption destroy the department from the inside?" Sarah's voice hardened. "You became a cop for a reason, Hayes. So did I. Are you going to help me or not?" Another long silence. Then, "Where are you?" "I can't tell you that. Not yet. But I'll call you tomorrow with a location where you can safely meet Amy and take her official statement. Bring someone you trust, absolutely. And Hayes, come armed. They're hunting her." Sarah ended the call before Hayes could protest. It was a risk trusting anyone in the department, but Hayes had always been straight, always by the book. If anyone would put duty before politics, it was him. Max suddenly stood, his body going rigid, his nose pointed toward the warehouse's main door, his ears forward, perfectly still. Sarah grabbed her borrowed weapon and moved to the window. Outside, a black sedan had pulled up across the street, its headlights off. 2 men sat inside, not moving, just watching the warehouse. "Amy, get down," Sarah whispered urgently. Amy dropped flat, her face pressed against the concrete floor. Sarah killed the small camping lantern they had been using for light, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Max moved silently to Sarah's side, every muscle coiled. He knew the drill. Unknown contacts. Potential threats. Wait for the command. The car doors opened. 2 men emerged, both wearing dark clothes, both moving with the careful precision of trained operators. One of them pointed at the warehouse, and they began approaching. Sarah's heart pounded. How had they found them so fast? She'd been careful. No phone GPS, no credit cards, nothing that could be traced, unless Hayes had betrayed her immediately. The men reached the warehouse door and tested it. Locked. One of them pulled out what looked like a small pry bar. They were coming in. Sarah calculated rapidly. 2 armed men, 1 suspended cop with a stolen gun, 1 traumatized civilian, and Max. The odds were not good. "Amy," Sarah whispered, "there's a back exit through that door on the left. When I say go, you run. Don't stop until you find people, lights, witnesses, somewhere public, understand? What about you? Max and I will buy you time. Go." Amy scrambled to her feet and ran for the back exit. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the empty warehouse. Outside, the men heard it. One of them spoke urgently into a radio. They abandoned the slow approach and began ramming the door. Sarah moved to a position behind a pile of old crates, weapon ready. Max crouched beside her, waiting. The door burst open. The first man entered fast, sweeping his weapon left and right. Professional, military training. The second man followed, covering different angles. They were not cops. They were contractors, mercenaries. "She's gone out the back," the first man said. His voice carried a slight accent. Russian. "Alexei, go. I'll clear this level." The second man, Alexei, sprinted toward the back exit. Sarah let him go. Splitting them up improved her odds. The first man moved deeper into the warehouse, his weapon up, his footsteps careful. He was good, very good. But he had made one critical mistake. He had assumed Sarah would run. When he passed her position, Sarah made her move. She stepped out from behind the crates, weapon aimed at his back. "Drop it!" The man froze, then slowly turned to face her. He was older than she expected, maybe 50, with gray hair and cold blue eyes that showed no fear. "Officer Collins, you are difficult to find. Drop the weapon, now." Instead, the man smiled. "You will not shoot me. You are a police officer. You follow rules. I'm a suspended police officer with nothing to lose. Last chance." The man's eyes flicked to something behind Sarah. His smile widened. Sarah realized her mistake a heartbeat too late. Alexei had not chased Amy. He had circled back. She heard his weapon cock behind her head. "Drop yours," Alexei said calmly. Sarah's mind raced. 2 guns on her, one in front, one behind. No way to take both simultaneously. The first man stepped forward. "The waitress, where is she?" "Long gone by now." "No matter, we will find her. But first, we deal with you." He raised his weapon, aiming at Sarah's head. "Your dog was famous in the department. Shame he will die with you." Max, who had been lying motionless in the shadows, finally moved. He did not growl. He did not bark. He simply exploded into motion with terrifying speed. Alexei, behind Sarah, was his target. Max hit him low and hard, going for the gun arm. Alexei screamed as 70 pounds of muscle and teeth clamped down. His weapon discharged, the bullet going wide. Sarah spun and fired at the first man. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. His weapon clattered to the floor, but he was not done. Despite the wound, he lunged at Sarah, driving her backward. They crashed into the crates, wood splintering around them. Sarah lost her grip on her weapon. They grappled hand to hand. The man was strong, trained, ruthless. He got his hands around Sarah's throat and squeezed. Black spots danced in her vision. Then Max was there. Having disabled Alexei, he turned on the first man with fury Sarah had never seen before. Max did not bite. He attacked, driving the man away from Sarah with pure aggression, forcing him back until the man stumbled over debris and fell. Max stood over him, teeth bared, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. The message was unmistakable: "Move and die." Sarah gasped for air, her throat burning. She retrieved her weapon and pointed it at both men. "Max, guard!" Max positioned himself where he could watch both attackers, his body language making it clear that any movement would be answered with violence. Alexei was clutching his mangled arm, blood seeping between his fingers. The first man lay still, his shoulder wound, bleeding steadily. Sarah zip-tied both of them, using supplies she had found in the warehouse. Then she called Hayes back. "I need an ambulance," and back up at the old Reynolds warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. 2 armed suspects down. "And Hayes, these are not local criminals. They're professional contractors. Russian connections. This is bigger than we thought. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay on the line." Sarah looked at Max, who was panting heavily but still alert, still watching the prisoners. Blood stained his muzzle again, but he showed no signs of injury. "Good boy," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Best partner I ever had." Max's tail wagged once, then stilled as his focus returned to the men on the ground. When Hayes arrived with backup, he found Sarah sitting against a crate with Max's head in her lap, both of them exhausted but alive. The 2 contractors were conscious and zip-tied, and Amy Chen was nowhere in sight. "Where's your witness?" Hayes demanded. "Safe. I'll bring her in when I'm absolutely certain she won't be killed the moment she sets foot in a precinct." Hayes looked at the 2 men, at the blood on the floor, at Max's alert posture. "You can't keep doing this, Collins. Eventually your luck runs out." "It's not luck," Sarah said, scratching behind Max's ears. "It's loyalty, something Marcus forgot the meaning of." Hayes knelt down, so he was at eye level with Sarah. "I pulled his financials like you asked. You were right. Marcus has deposits totaling over $300,000 in the past year. Offshore accounts, shell companies. He's been running this operation for a long time. Sarah felt vindication surge through her. "So you believe me now?" "I'm starting to, but I need your witness on record. I need her statement to connect Marcus to these men, to the conspiracy. Without her testimony, all we have is financial irregularities. Give me 24 hours. I'll find Amy, make sure she's safe, and bring her in, but only if you guarantee her protection, real protection. Federal marshals, witness protection, the works." Hayes studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 24 hours. After that, I have to report you as a fugitive. Fair enough. As the ambulances took the contractors away and crime scene techs began processing the warehouse, Sarah and Max slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere in Atlanta, Amy Chen was hiding, terrified and alone, but she was alive, and Sarah had 24 hours to make sure she stayed that way. Sarah found Amy huddled in a 24-hour laundromat 6 blocks from the warehouse, sitting in the corner with her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the spinning dryers like they held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. When Amy saw Sarah and Max enter, relief and terror crossed her face in equal measure. "I thought they got you," Amy whispered. "I heard gunshots. They didn't get us." Sarah sat down beside her, and Max immediately positioned himself between them and the door. "But they're not giving up. We have less than 24 hours to put this together, or Detective Hayes has to report me as a fugitive. What happens then? Then every cop in Atlanta is looking for us, and we lose any chance of clearing my name or keeping you alive." Sarah pulled out a notebook she had been keeping, filled with names, dates, and connections. "I need you to tell me everything again, every detail, every face, every word you remember. We're going to build a case so solid that they can't ignore it." For the next 3 hours, as the sun rose over Atlanta and morning commuters began filling the streets, Amy recounted everything she had witnessed. Sarah wrote furiously, cross-referencing dates with Marcus's duty logs that she had memorized, connecting dots that had seemed random before. "The shipment they mentioned," Sarah said, tapping her pen against the notebook. "You said it was coming through the port. Atlanta doesn't have a seaport, but we have the busiest airport in the world." "Hartsfield-Jackson," Amy said, understanding dawning. "They're smuggling something through the airport. And they have someone in customs making sure it gets through without inspection." Sarah flipped through her notes. "You said they mentioned millions of dollars. That's not just stolen evidence. That's drugs, weapons, or both." Max's ears suddenly perked up. Sarah followed his gaze to see a patrol car rolling slowly past the laundromat. The officer inside was scanning the street, searching. "We need to move," Sarah said, gathering her things. "They're expanding the search." They exited through the back and made their way through alleys and side streets, always moving, never staying in one place long enough to establish a pattern. Max led the way, his senses alert to any threat, guiding them away from danger with an instinct that Sarah had learned never to question. By noon, they had reached a small motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that took cash and did not ask questions. Sarah paid for a room under a false name and immediately closed all the curtains. Amy collapsed on one of the beds, exhausted. Max took up position by the door, his eyes never closing despite his own fatigue. Sarah's burner phone buzzed. "Detective Hayes." "Talk to me," Sarah answered. "I've been digging deeper into Marcus's operation. You need to hear this." Hayes sounded tense, his voice low like he was worried about being overheard. "Marcus's offshore accounts trace back to a shell company owned by Dmitry Volkov, a Russian national with known ties to organized crime. Volkov's been on the FBI's radar for years, but they've never been able to make charges stick." "Because he has protection," Sarah said. "The judge Amy mentioned. Who is it? That's where it gets complicated. I pulled the records of every case where seized evidence went missing. They all went through the same judge for initial arraignment. Judge Richard Harmon, Superior Court." Sarah's blood went cold. Judge Harmon was one of the most respected judges in Atlanta, known for his tough stance on crime and his impeccable record. If he was corrupt, if he was part of this conspiracy, then the rot went deeper than anyone imagined. "Are you certain?" "The pattern is undeniable. Every single case. And there's more. Judge Harmon's son was arrested 2 years ago for possession with intent to distribute. The charges were dropped due to procedural errors in the evidence chain. Want to guess who was the arresting officer? Marcus Webb, Sarah said. Exactly. Marcus had leverage on Harmon. He's been using it ever since. Sarah's mind raced. A corrupt judge, a dirty detective, Russian organized crime, and a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Atlanta law enforcement. And she was supposed to expose it all in less than 24 hours with no badge, no authority, and no resources except a traumatized witness and a K-9 partner. Hayes, I need you to set up a meeting with the FBI. Someone outside the local system who can take custody of Amy and protect her while she gives testimony. Already done. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez specializes in organized crime and public corruption. She's flying in from Washington tonight. She'll meet us at a secure location at 8 p.m. Where? Hayes gave her an address. An FBI safe house in a suburban neighborhood, heavily secured, with multiple escape routes. It was as safe as they were going to get. 8 p.m., Sarah confirmed. I'll have Amy there. What about you? I have something to take care of first. Collins, don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. Sarah ended the call. Amy had been listening to the conversation, her face pale. You're going after Marcus, aren't you? I need to make him talk. He's the key to all of this. If I can get him on record admitting what he did, admitting who he's working for, then we have everything we need. He'll kill you. He'll try. Sarah looked at Max, who returned her gaze with absolute confidence. But I've got an advantage he doesn't expect. What's that? He thinks I'm alone. He thinks I've lost everything. Sarah's jaw set with determination. But I haven't lost the only partner that matters. At 6 p.m., Sarah left Amy at the motel with strict instructions to stay hidden until Hayes came to collect her at 7:30. Max stayed with Amy, his presence both protection and comfort. Sarah could see the trust in Amy's eyes as she petted Max's head, drawing strength from his calm steadiness. Take care of her, boy, Sarah said. Max's tail wagged once. Promise made. Sarah drove across Atlanta to Marcus Webb's apartment building, a modern complex in a trendy neighborhood that was well beyond what a detective's salary should afford. More evidence of his corruption. Money he had earned betraying everything the badge represented. She'd called Marcus from a payphone, using a voice modulator app on her burner phone to disguise her identity, telling him that Dmitry Volkov wanted to meet urgently. Marcus had agreed immediately, his voice tight with stress. He was scared. Good. Scared people made mistakes. Sarah positioned herself in the parking garage, hidden behind a concrete pillar, and waited. At 6:45, Marcus emerged from the elevator, looking over his shoulder repeatedly, his hand resting on his concealed weapon. He was dressed in civilian clothes, trying to blend in, but his body language screamed, "Cop." He approached his car, a luxury sedan that cost more than Sarah made in 2 years. As he reached for the door handle, Sarah stepped out from behind the pillar, her borrowed weapon aimed at his center mass. "Hello, Marcus." Marcus froze, his face cycling through shock, fear, and then anger. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "What am I doing? I'm getting my life back, the life you tried to destroy." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't." Sarah's voice was ice. "Don't insult me by pretending. Crane confirmed everything. The contractors at the warehouse confirmed everything. Detective Hayes pulled your financials. It's over, Marcus. The only question now is whether you go down alone or take everyone with you." Marcus's hand moved slightly toward his weapon. "Don't," Sarah warned. "I've had a very long, very bad week. I'm tired, I'm angry, and I'm no longer bound by department regulations. Draw that weapon, and I will put you down." Marcus's hand stilled. His eyes darted around the garage, calculating options, looking for escape routes. "There's nowhere to run," Sarah said. "Volkov's men are being rounded up. Judge Harmon is under investigation. The FBI is involved now. Your entire operation is collapsing." "The FBI?" Marcus's face went white. "You called the FBI?" "Special Agent Martinez is very interested in your offshore accounts and your relationship with Dmitry Volkov." Marcus sagged against his car, the fight draining out of him. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah saw the man she thought she knew, the partner who used to buy coffee on early mornings, the friend who had helped her train Max. But that man had been a lie. Maybe he had always been a lie. Why? Sarah asked, the question she had been holding inside since this started. Why did you do it? You were a good cop. You had a future. Marcus laughed bitterly. A future? Making $50,000 a year while criminals drove Mercedes and lived in mansions? Watching evidence worth millions get destroyed in the incinerator while I could barely afford rent? The system is broken, Sarah. I just decided to stop being its victim. So you became one of them instead. I became smart. Volkov approached me 2 years ago with an offer. Help him move product through the city, make sure evidence disappeared when necessary, and I'd make more money than I'd see in 20 years of straight police work. And when they needed a scapegoat, you offered me up. Marcus had the decency to look ashamed. They were going to shut down the operation. Too much heat from internal affairs. They needed someone to take the fall, someone clean. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to destroy me to save yourself. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and for a moment he sounded like he meant it. If there had been any other way, there was another way. You could have been honest. You could have been loyal. You could have been the partner I thought you were. Sarah's weapon never wavered. Now you're going to make a choice. You're going to testify against Volkov, against Judge Harmon, against everyone involved in this conspiracy. In exchange, the FBI might offer you a deal. You might spend 20 years in prison instead of 40. And if I refuse, then you go down for everything, every charge, every crime, maximum sentences running consecutively. You'll die in prison, Marcus. Is Volkov's money worth that? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his internal battle playing out across his face. Finally, he spoke. I'll need protection, witness protection. Volkov doesn't forgive betrayal. That's not my problem, but the FBI can arrange it if your testimony is good enough. It will be. I can give them everything. Names, dates, transactions, recordings. I kept insurance, files Volkov doesn't know about. Everything I need to destroy his entire network. Sarah felt triumph surge through her. This was it, the evidence she needed. The confession that would clear her name and bring down everyone involved. Where are the files? Safe deposit box, downtown bank. I'll take you there now. No. You'll tell Detective Hayes where they are, and he'll secure them through proper channels. You're not going anywhere except FBI custody. Sarah pulled out her phone to call Hayes, to tell him she had Marcus and he was ready to cooperate. That was when everything went wrong. The shot came from above, from one of the parking garage's upper levels. It hit Marcus in the chest, spinning him around. He collapsed against his car, blood spreading across his shirt, his eyes wide with shock. Sarah dove behind a concrete pillar as a second shot ricocheted off the pavement where she had been standing. She returned fire toward the source. 3 quick shots that bought her seconds to reach better cover. Marcus! She crawled toward him, keeping low. He was still alive, gasping, his hand pressed uselessly against the wound. Volkov, Marcus coughed. He knew. He always knows. Another shot shattered Marcus's car window. The shooter was repositioning, trying to get a clean angle on Sarah. Sarah grabbed Marcus and dragged him behind a larger vehicle, her muscles screaming with the effort. He was heavy, dead weight, bleeding out fast. Stay with me, Sarah demanded. Where are the files? Exact location. First, National Bank. Downtown, Marcus gasped. Box 374, or key in my apartment, false bottom, closet drawer. Marcus, stay awake. We're getting you out of here. But Marcus's eyes were already glazing over. His hand fell away from the wound, and his breathing stopped. Sarah checked for a pulse. Nothing. Her partner, her betrayer, was dead. Footsteps echoed in the garage. The shooter was coming to confirm the kill. Sarah made a split-second decision. She ran. She sprinted for the exit, keeping vehicles between herself and the shooter, her heart hammering. Behind her, shots rang out, bullets sparking off concrete and metal. She burst out of the parking garage into the evening street, immediately blending into a crowd of pedestrians. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Sarah kept moving, her mind reeling. Marcus was dead. Volkov had killed him to keep him from talking. But Marcus had given her what she needed, the location of his insurance files. She had to get to that safe deposit box before Volkov's people did, and she had to get back to Amy before 8 p.m. Sarah checked her watch. 7:15. She had 45 minutes. She ran. Sarah's hands were still shaking when she pulled into the motel parking lot at 7:55. 5 minutes. She had 5 minutes to collect Amy and get to the FBI safe house before Hayes arrived to find them gone. But first, she needed to make a decision that went against every instinct she had as a cop. She needed to break into Marcus's apartment and steal evidence before the police secured it as a crime scene. Sarah killed the engine and sat for a moment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Marcus's blood was still on her hands, literally. She had tried to save him despite everything, had pressed her hands against the wound even knowing it was futile. Her partner was dead. A traitor, a criminal, but still her partner for 3 years. And now she was about to rob his apartment. The motel room door opened, and Max bounded out, followed by Amy. The relief on both their faces when they saw Sarah was overwhelming. "I heard on the radio," Amy said breathlessly. "A shooting in a parking garage. Was it? Marcus is dead. Volkov killed him before he could talk." Sarah climbed out of the truck, and Max immediately pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. "But Marcus told me where his insurance files are. Evidence that will bring down everyone. I need to get it before Volkov does. The FBI meeting will have to wait 20 minutes. Sarah looked at Amy. "Can you drive?" "Yes, but take my truck. Drive to this address." Sarah wrote down the location of the safe house. "Detective Hayes will be there. Tell him everything. Tell him I'm securing Marcus's evidence and I'll be there in 30 minutes. "What if you're not there in 30 minutes? Amy's voice was small, frightened. "Then tell Agent Martinez where to find Marcus's files and let the FBI handle it." Sarah handed Amy the truck keys. "But I'll be there. I promise." Max whined, looking between Sarah and the truck. He knew something was wrong. He knew Sarah was about to do something dangerous. "Max stays with you," Sarah said to Amy. "He'll protect you until you reach the FBI." "No." Amy's voice was firm. "He's your partner. You need him more than I do." Sarah knelt down and looked into Max's eyes. 6 years of partnership, 6 years of trust. She had never gone into danger without him, and he had never let her down. "Okay, boy, one last mission. Then we're done. Then we rest." Max's tail wagged once. "Ready." Sarah watched Amy drive away in her truck, then hot-wired a car from the motel parking lot, a skill she had learned in her academy days and never thought she would actually use. Within 3 minutes, she and Max were racing across Atlanta toward Marcus's apartment. The parking garage where Marcus had died was already swarming with police and crime scene investigators. Sarah drove past slowly, noting the activity, then circled to Marcus's building from the opposite direction. His apartment was on the 5th floor. Sarah took the stairs, Max at her side, both of them moving silently. The hallway was empty, no police presence yet. They had not connected Marcus's apartment to the crime scene yet, or they were still securing the garage first. Sarah picked the lock on Marcus's door, another academy skill, and slipped inside with Max. The apartment was exactly as she remembered from the one time Marcus had invited her over for a barbecue. Modern furniture, expensive electronics, artwork that cost more than her monthly salary, blood money, all of it. "Find," Sarah whispered to Max, giving him the search command. Max's nose went to work immediately, sweeping the apartment systematically. But Sarah already knew where to look. Marcus had said, false bottom, closet drawer. She found the closet in the master bedroom. Designer clothes, expensive shoes, a gun safe that probably held more weapons than Marcus had ever registered. Sarah pulled open the top drawer of the built-in dresser system. Socks, neatly folded. She emptied the drawer, feeling along the bottom. There, a slight seam, barely visible. She pried it up with her fingernails, and the false bottom came away. Underneath was a single key on a ring, marked with the First National Bank logo and the number 374. Sarah pocketed the key and replaced the drawer. As she stood, Max growled low, his ears forward, focused on the apartment door. Someone was coming. Sarah moved to the door and peered through the peephole. Two men in the hallway, both wearing tactical gear, both carrying weapons. Not police, private security, Volkov's men. They had been watching the apartment, waiting to see if anyone would come for Marcus's evidence. Sarah backed away from the door and looked around frantically for another exit. The balcony, 5th floor, but there was a fire escape. She ran for the sliding glass door, Max right behind her. She opened it as quietly as possible and stepped onto the balcony. The fire escape was to her left, a metal ladder leading down to the 4th floor. Behind her, she heard the apartment door being forced open. "Go, Max!" Max leaped onto the fire escape without hesitation. Sarah followed, her feet hitting the metal grating just as gunfire erupted from the balcony above. Bullets pinged off the fire escape, sending sparks flying. Sarah descended as fast as she dared, Max ahead of her, both of them racing against death. At the 2nd floor, Sarah grabbed Max and jumped the remaining distance, hitting the ground hard and rolling. Pain shot through her ankle, but she forced herself to run. Behind them, the two men were descending the fire escape, still firing. Sarah and Max ran through the alley behind the apartment building, weaving between dumpsters and parked cars. A bullet shattered a car window inches from Sarah's head. Another sparked off the concrete at her feet. Then Max did something Sarah had never seen him do before. He stopped running. He turned and charged back toward their pursuers. "Max, no!" Sarah screamed. But Max was already in motion, 70 pounds of fury and loyalty. He hit the first man low and hard, taking him down, his jaws clamping onto the man's gun arm. The weapon clattered away. The second man turned his gun toward Max. Sarah fired first. Her shot caught him in the leg and he went down, his weapon flying from his hand. Sarah sprinted back and grabbed Max's collar. "Release! Come!" Max let go immediately, and they ran together, leaving both men wounded but alive in the alley. Sarah heard them shouting into radios, calling for backup, but she and Max were already gone, disappearing into the Atlanta night. At 8:45 p.m., Sarah burst through the door of the FBI safe house, Max at her side, both of them breathing hard, covered in sweat and grime. Detective Hayes, Special Agent Martinez, and Amy all jumped to their feet. "Collins!" Hayes barked. "Where the hell have you been?" Sarah held up the key. "Getting evidence." She turned to Agent Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone who had seen everything and was impressed by nothing. "Special Agent Martinez, I'm Officer Sarah Collins. This key opens safe deposit box 374 at First National Bank downtown. Inside, you'll find files that Marcus Webb compiled on Dmitry Volkov's criminal operation, including evidence of Judge Richard Harmon's involvement." Martinez took the key, examining it. "How do you know what's in the box?" "Because Marcus told me before he died. He kept insurance files. Everything you need to dismantle Volkov's network and expose every corrupt official he's bought. Assuming the files actually exist and aren't a trap. They exist. Marcus was a traitor, but he was a smart traitor. He knew Volkov might turn on him eventually. He protected himself the only way he knew how." Martinez studied Sarah for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll check it out first thing in the morning when the bank opens. In the meantime, Miss Chen, I need your full statement. Everything you saw, everyone you heard, every detail." Amy looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Tell her everything. She'll keep you safe." For the next 2 hours, Amy recounted her story, while Martinez recorded everything. Hayes added the evidence he had compiled on Marcus's financials, the pattern of missing evidence, the connections to Volkov. Slowly, methodically, they built a case that was undeniable. At 11 p.m., Martinez made a call. 20 minutes later, 3 FBI agents arrived with a warrant for Judge Harmon's arrest. By midnight, the judge was in custody. his carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbling in real time. By 2 a.m., the files from Marcus's safe deposit box had been retrieved by a specialized FBI team. Inside were spreadsheets, recorded conversations, photographs, financial documents, and a detailed ledger of every transaction Volkov's organization had made through Atlanta in the past 2 years. It was everything Martinez needed. At 6 a.m., as the sun rose over Atlanta, coordinated raids hit 12 locations simultaneously. Volkov's operations were dismantled in a single morning. Corrupt officials were arrested, criminal networks were destroyed, and slowly, carefully, the truth began to emerge. Sarah sat in the FBI conference room, Max sleeping at her feet, watching the news coverage on the monitors. Her name was mentioned repeatedly, but this time not as a suspect. This time as the officer who had exposed the corruption, who had risked everything to protect a witness and bring criminals to justice. Captain Morrison arrived at 8 a.m., his face haggard but determined. He found Sarah in the conference room and stopped in the doorway, looking at her for a long moment. Collins. "Captain, I owe you an apology. A significant one." "Yes, you do." Morrison entered the room and closed the door. He pulled Sarah's badge from his pocket and held it out to her. "Internal Affairs has concluded their investigation. All charges dropped. Your suspension is lifted effective immediately. Your service record will reflect that you were working undercover to expose the corruption." Sarah took the badge, the weight of it familiar and right in her hand. She pinned it to her belt, right where it belonged. "There's more," Morrison continued. "The department is offering you a promotion. Detective, if you want it. You've earned it. I don't want to be a detective. I want to be a K-9 officer, with Max." Morrison smiled slightly. "I figured you'd say that. Then as a K-9 officer, with a commendation for bravery and a formal apology from me and the entire department, does that work?" "It works." Sarah's voice caught slightly. "But I need something else. Name it. Amy Chen. She needs witness protection, a new identity, and help starting over somewhere safe. She saved my life. I owe her everything. Agent Martinez has already arranged it. Miss Chen will be relocated within 48 hours. Full protection, new identity, financial support. She'll be safe." Sarah felt relief wash over her. Amy would be okay. After everything, the young waitress who had risked everything would get a chance at a normal life. "And Collins." Morrison's voice was gentle. "Take a few days off. You've earned it. You and Max both." Sarah looked down at her partner, who had opened one eye at the sound of his name. "Hear that, boy? We get to rest." Max's tail thumped once against the floor. 3 days later, Sarah stood in Amy's motel room, helping her pack the few belongings she would take to her new life. 2 federal marshals waited outside, ready to transport her to an undisclosed location. "I don't know how to thank you," Amy said, folding a shirt carefully. "You lost everything to protect me." "I didn't lose everything. I lost a badge temporarily. You almost lost your life." Sarah handed Amy a photograph. "This is my number. It's secure. If you ever need anything, ever, you call me, day or night." Amy looked at the photo, then at Sarah, tears in her eyes. "In another life, I think we could have been friends. In this life, we are friends. You just have to be my friend from very far away." They hugged, and Sarah felt Amy trembling. This young woman had shown courage that most trained officers would never possess. She had seen evil and chosen to fight it, knowing the cost. "Take care of yourself, Amy. You too. And Sarah, thank Max for me. He's a hero." As if understanding, Max walked over and sat in front of Amy, offering his paw. Amy laughed through her tears and shook it solemnly. Then the marshals came and took her away, and Sarah watched the car disappear down the street, carrying Amy Chen towards safety and a new beginning. 1 week after the arrests, Sarah returned to active duty. The precinct gave her a standing ovation when she walked through the door, Max at her side. Officers she had worked with for years came up to shake her hand, to apologize for doubting her, to welcome her back. Even the ones who had avoided her eyes during the investigation now looked at her with respect and something close to awe. She had stood alone against corruption and won. She had protected a witness when everyone else had turned away. She had proven that loyalty and integrity still mattered. That evening, Sarah sat on her back porch with Max lying beside her, watching the sunset paint Atlanta's skyline in shades of gold and amber. Her badge was on her belt. Her gun was on her hip. Her partner was at her side. Everything was as it should be. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for everything. Starting my new life today. Wish me luck." A friend who knew too much. Sarah smiled and typed back, "Good luck. Stay safe. We did good." The response came immediately. "We did great. Give Max a hug from me." Sarah put the phone away and wrapped her arms around Max's neck. "You heard her, buddy. She says hello." Max's tail wagged contentedly. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun set on another day in Atlanta, a city that was a little bit cleaner, a little bit safer, because one officer had refused to let corruption win. Sarah Collins had lost her badge for trusting the wrong partner, but a waitress had appeared and changed everything. And now, with her real partner by her side, Sarah was exactly where she belonged, on the streets of Atlanta, keeping people safe, one case at a time, with Max, always with Max. The end of one story, but never the end of their partnership, because some bonds are unbreakable, forged in danger, and tempered by loyalty. And nothing, not corruption, not betrayal, not even death itself, could ever break the bond between Sarah Collins and her K9 partner. Justice had been unleashed and it had won.